Hello and welcome to All Top 5s. It's not just houses or buildings that can be haunted. Around the world you can find stories about objects possessed or haunted by a spirit or demon, and many tales of what happened to the unfortunate owners or recipients of the object in question. Here are 5 of the most interesting supposedly haunted objects that I can find information about. Please note, I'm not featuring any of the dolls, because that'll be its own separate video. Number 5. The Hands Resist Him painting. I thought I'd start off with a controversial one. There's a lot of argument over whether this is cursed or not, but I like the painting and the story behind it, so here it is. I'll let you decide. In 1972, Bill Stoneham painted this creepy piece, showing a boy and a girl doll standing before a dark glass-panelled door with seemingly disembodied hands pressed up against it. The creepy nature of the painting is enough to spook me anyway, but there's a bit of a backstory that makes it even scarier. The actor John Marley bought the painting soon after its creation, and after his death, the story goes that an elderly American couple found it in an old brewery. In early 2000, the painting appeared on eBay with the alleged backstory in the listing description. The main theme of this was that the painting was haunted. The seller claimed the subjects in the painting, mainly the boy and the doll, would move around at night. They even said that the characters would occasionally leave the painting and enter the room in which the painting was housed. There was one incident that was allegedly caught on webcam where the doll pointed a gun at the boy and he left the painting. This obviously went viral very quickly. The painting began on eBay at $199 but ended up at $1,025 after 30 bids. The original artist, Bill Stoneham, was contacted by the auction winner, a Michigan art gallery, who told him about the story and the curse. Apparently he was surprised and he had no knowledge of curses or hauntings while he was painting the piece. Indeed, he commented that the item the doll is holding is simply a battery and some wiring, quite clear when you look at it, and he based it on a photo of himself as a young child. Bill did admit that when it was first displayed in the 1970s, the gallery owner and an art critic who reviewed it both died less than a year later. What do you think though? Coincidence or curse? Number 4. Dead Man's Chair. Otherwise known as the Busby's Stoop Chair, this old chair made of oak is supposedly haunted by the murderer who owned it, Thomas Busby. A well-known gambler and drunkard, Thomas Busby led a scoundrel's life in Yorkshire, England, until 1702 when he murdered his father-in-law. We don't know the full story of why he did this, but he was arrested for his crime and during his trial he was sentenced to be hanged as punishment. His dead body was displayed on a gibbet by a crossroads, where the Busby Stoop Inn was then built later on, before it closed in 2012. The inn was named after the stoop he was hung from. The area is said to be haunted by the ghost of Thomas Busby, but one particular chair in the inn became feared by its patrons. During the war, pilots who were in the area deemed the chair unlucky, though we don't know for what reason, and by the 1970s there were some accidents, mostly fatal, that were linked to the chair as well. The landlord of the inn became so concerned that he requested that a local museum, the Thirsk Museum in Yorkshire, take the chair from the inn. In 1978, the museum agreed and has displayed the supposedly cursed chair ever since. This chair, termed the Dead Man's Chair as well, was hung on a wall to prevent anyone sitting in it, and perhaps preventing Thomas Busby's ghost from claiming any more victims. Number 3. The Crying Boy Painting. Time for another scary painting. Painted by the Italian Bruno Amadio, who was sometimes known as Giovanni Bragolin, this portrait of a crying boy was one of several variations on the same theme. In the 1950s and onwards, quite a few were printed and distributed around the UK. Not always known as the most reliable source, but a source nonetheless, it was printed in 1985 in the British newspaper The Sun that the painting was jinxed. Apparently, a fireman was interviewed saying that amongst the burned ruins of houses that he had visited that had caught fire, he and his fire crew would often find an undamaged copy of the painting. This happened frequently, and The Sun and other tabloid newspapers began to report on other houses with the same occurrence. Within 2 months, so many people knew about the supposedly haunted painting that bonfires were being organised to destroy people's copies of it. No one knows why this painting would be haunted, but a British radio production did a little research into it and tested it in house fire situations. It was discovered that each painting's print was varnished with a fire-repelling substance, meaning that it would be protected for a time. The string that held the picture to the wall would burn first, causing it to fall face down on the floor, so it would remain protected throughout the blazing fire. This is a good point, but it's not entirely convincing, however, and it didn't explain why it only seemed to be this painting that always survived each fire, when no others did. Who knows who or what, if anything, haunts this painting? The picture itself certainly makes me quite uncomfortable anyway. Number 2. The Hope Diamond. Dubbed the most famous diamond in the world, the Hope Diamond is owned by the Smithsonian Museum and kept on display at the Natural History Museum in Washington, D.C. in the USA. Worth around $250,000, it's also famously rumoured to be cursed or haunted, with a lot of controversy surrounding this claim. The reputation of the Hope Diamond is that it brings bad luck and tragic death to its owner, or wearer. One story goes that the diamond's origin was actually stolen from the eye socket of a Hindu goddess, and the angry goddess herself cursed the stolen object to affect the fate of anyone who crossed its path. It kind of reminds me a bit of the curse of the tomb of Tutankhamun, which is also likely a fabricated, exaggerated account. In the early 1900s, a Washington Post article, followed by several others including the New York Times, began describing the curse, where it came from, and a list of alleged owners who had tragic and unfortunate deaths after becoming the owner of the sinister jewel, or wearing it. One committed suicide, one was killed by Russian revolutionists, one was murdered by her lover, one was thrown with his family to their deaths from a high place, one was imprisoned and tortured, one was hanged by a mob, another was hanged, there was one torn apart by wild dogs, one was jilted, one died a ruined man, one was ripped apart by a mob, one thief committed suicide, and another died miserable and alone. Quite the list of tragedies, but it's a bit vague in terms of reliability. There were even people who sued the seller of the Hope Diamond, claiming its malevolent influence caused them terribly bad luck. However, there's a lot of counter-argument saying that these stories were cleverly made up to increase the value of the diamond, along with gaining a lot of press in the newspapers and the talk of the people. Certainly, since it's been owned by the Smithsonian since 1958, nothing but good luck has come to the museum. Or is the diamond just biding its time to bring terrible financial ruin upon the institution or its employees? Hopefully not. Number 1. The Dybbuk Box. This one really scares me, and that's why I've chosen it for my number 1. The Dybbuk Box is a wine cabinet which is claimed to be haunted by a malevolent spirit capable of haunting and possessing people who come into contact with the box. In Judaism, this evil spirit is restless and known as a Dybbuk. In the 2000s, Kevin Mannis put a wine cabinet up for auction on eBay and described its terrifying history in full. Kevin used to collect antiques to refurbish and sell on for a profit, and acquired this box in 2003. Apparently, the box had belonged to Havela, a Polish survivor of the Holocaust, who had bought the box in Spain and then moved to the USA, and her granddaughter was the one who sold it to Kevin, letting him know its origins and saying that her family didn't want it, even though it was an heirloom. She told him that a Dybbuk lived inside it, so it was never opened, and it was always kept safe in her grandmother's sewing room. Despite this chilling warning, Kevin opened the box and found inside it 2 coins from the 1920s, a lock of blonde hair and a lock of brown hair, a tiny statue with the Hebrew word shalom engraved upon it, a golden wine goblet, a rosebud, and a sculpted candle holder. Eerie things to find, especially the locks of hair. After opening it, Kevin began to have terrifying nightmares. The scary thing about this is that anyone staying in his house or in possession of the box had the same nightmares as he did. These nightmares were reported to involve an old hag. Anyone who examined the box claimed that there was a strong smell of cat urine too. The final straw for Kevin was that apparently when he gave his mother the box as a birthday present, I'm not sure why, but she had a stroke that same day. One student from Missouri bought the box after Kevin, only to sell it on again after his hair fell out and all the lights in his house burned out. He wrote blogs about this cabinet, and eventually Jason Haxton, a museum director, bought it from him and studied it. Jason wrote a book about his experiences called The Dybbuk Box, wherein he describes developing hives, coughing up blood and strange welts all over his body soon after purchasing the box. He called upon Jewish rabbis to help him seal the box again and contain the Dybbuk once and for all. This ceremony was apparently successful, and Jason hid the box away for good, never to reveal its location. This was the premise for the 2012 Sam Raimi film The Possession, and the experiences suffered by those who owned the Dybbuk Box have never had a rational explanation given other than coincidence. Coincidences do definitely happen, but could it have been an evil demon residing inside, causing pain and misery to those it haunted? And that's it from all top 5s for this week. As I said before, I'll do a video soon specifically about haunted dolls, including the very famous Robert the Doll, and there are plenty of others around as well. And they're seriously scary. What do you think about the 5 that I've talked about in this video? Any truth there? Remember when you're discussing this in the comments below, just to be polite and respectful of other people's opinions and beliefs. Let's all get along. If you enjoyed this video, please give it the thumbs up, the like button on YouTube, because that does help me out and it means other people can find the videos as well. If you haven't already, you can subscribe, and I will be delivering a new video every single Tuesday for you. So, be good to people, peace and love to each and every one of you, and I'll see you all next time on All Top 5s.